Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. Well, I know I said I wouldn't be talking about this subject too much anymore following the video I did not so long ago about the monetization on the Burning Crusade, but after that happened we did manage to see some change, so I thought why not let's talk about this a little bit because I do think it's important. Following the release of the level 58 level boost in World of Warcraft Classic, there has been no shortage of new bot farms starting to pop up and taking advantage of that to skip so much of the time they would have had to invest in their characters otherwise. And this is specifically relating to the amount of them that can be found in Zul'Farrak at the moment. It's pretty simple what they're doing: boost a character to 58, get them over to Tanaris, run them into Zul'Farrak, go and farm the graveyards. It's very similar to what they had to do with rogues in BRD, except now they can just pay Blizzard $40 and they have their character straight away, rather than having to boost them or level them via in-game methods. And similar to BRD, it's also a raw gold farm, which also makes it a consistent gold farm because it's not like Righteous Orbs where eventually they'll just crash the market and they'll end up having vendor value. As with usual with the botting side of things, NA has been hit hardest, and I looked at this the other day, and this had been going on for a few days at this point. I was trying to monitor the situation and see how things would go, but you could do a slash who of level 58 mages in Zul'Farrak, and there would literally be near 50 mages in there just farming gold. And I'm tempted to say literally all of them will be bots or gold farmers, because to be honest, if you're level 58 in Zul'Farrak, I've heard you stop earning XP at level 56. Why wouldn't you just level the rest of the way to 60 and then continue making gold from there? And this had happened within a week of the actual pre-patch and the paid character boost being released. Botters were ready for this to happen and had plans in place to go straight away. And originally the video was just going to be around this subject, but just the other day, a huge ban wave has gone out for an enormous amount of players as well as bots. Now, it does appear to have got a lot of players in there as well. People are banned for using things like iMorph and console port. This could be a side effect of the EULA update Blizzard did some time ago, where they made all software or hardware solutions for multi-boxing now against their terms of service. And having gone back and checked today to see whether the situation is still the same, there has been a huge culling of the amount of people able to do that. So either hopefully they've been permanently banned, or maybe it's just the software they were using doesn't work anymore basically, and they're going to have to come up with a workaround, and then it'll be just as bad in a few weeks time again. Because if this situation isn't actively monitored, well, let's say the bots in BRD, they were doing pickpocketing, they could just be inside the instance forever and ever and ever, and they would have been making what, about 20 to 30 gold an hour? In Zul'Farrak, they do have to come outside of the instance, then go back in, so this does give players a chance to actually gank them or be able to report them, which is already a benefit over what people were doing in BRD. But a player can make around 50 gold, 60 gold per hour, so maybe a bot can make around 35 to 40 or so. So it's still around 50% more than they could have been making in the previous dungeon, which is why it's so important to stay on top of this, because with how many people are already buying gold and how many people are botting to meet that demand, the market will surely only grow if no action's taken. Instead of all that startup time, the investment to actually get the character to the appropriate level, $40 at Bobby, and they're ready to go like that straight away. So you can see how it's going to expand very quickly if nothing happens. And of course, the one boost per account is a complete non-issue if you're botting, because when are you ever going to invest more time than is necessary into the one character? On top of this, some time ago, you may have been aware that botters often use the subscription fees in Argentina for North America or for Russia for Europe. Those prices were actually increased as well by a margin of about 20 to 30%. So not only is it $40 toward Blizzard, the actual subscription fee that people were using to circumvent the regular $15 that the rest of us are paying has now also gone up in tandem. So you can absolutely bet at the moment the demand for buying gold has gone through the roof. We could talk double easily if the ban wave has any substance to it long term, maybe even triple. And hopefully that will start to dissuade people from actually doing it if it's not really cheap. Because the other side of the boosting is the actual players that have done it to get back into the game, to play with their friends, reroll a new class, a new server, you know the reasons. What do they start with? A 60% speed mount, a bunch of 12 slot bags, which was downgraded from 14 at the last minute. Their gear is absolutely garbage, like it is so unbelievably bad. They've ended up with a bunch of greens that have random stats thrown on them, and they're just not really good for anything, to be honest. Meaning your options for making gold as a player who's returning to this situation is pretty much a gathering, I guess. Oh, and by the way, they start with professions at level 1, so if you did want to start gathering, well, it's back to Elwyn Forest or Durotar to make a start fresh then. After all, you've already paid $40 to skip over 100 hours of leveling. what is a bit more money to skip all the extra time you would have to put into farming gold to be actually able to play the game, such as being able to afford your epic mount, let alone flying if or when you hit level 70. This is almost like why people had a problem with the boost in the first place, as the game doesn't start at level cap, it doesn't start at level 58, it starts at level 1. That's why Azure Missile and Eversong Forest exist. And we know how this has gone in retail over the years as well. We don't have to go down any slippery slopes here. There's like a perfect framework in place, and one thing leads to another. It's avoiding playing the game at all costs, quite literally. Some things should just be a certain way in the game. For instance, I play on a huge server, Pirewood Village. We've already had layers come back, and we've had some queues as well at peak times, and I know that's the same case for many other servers as well. I can imagine if I get disconnected on unlucky time on launch day, I'm going to have to sit for a queue of thousands and thousands of players, and that could potentially go on for weeks. And you know what? I'm more than happy to sit in that queue because I know what the alternative is. It's sharding and cross-realm zones. And those things water down the community and the epic scale of events in Classic so much. There's a reason we're trying to get away from going the way things have gone in retail over the years, you know, not to call retail bad for the sake of it, but there's some things that we're trying to actively avoid here, which we're kind of starting to turn into a little bit now. Off the back of that, if I wanted to play a new class, I would go level it. If I hated leveling enough, I would buy a boost for another player. If I couldn't afford to buy a boost, I would go farm gold in the game. If I had problems earning gold, I might change my professions. I might look up different guides. I might see what sells well on the auction house over time. In other words, I would play the game. The game presents you with issues, and it also has the solutions in them as well. It's sad to see whenever a game creates an environment where just throwing money at it can skip you straight to the end. MMOs were always the equalizer. We all start at level 1, we all level up together, we all earn stuff, we all grow our characters. Don't have time to play 14 hours a day, real life responsibilities, kids, jobs, all these other things? Well, I guess that just didn't happen back in 2007 and literally everybody had all the time in the world. These problems have always existed. People have just come so used and accustomed to throwing money at problems. If I can make some brief comparison between RuneScape and WoW, you don't need to know anything about the games in particular, so don't worry about that. They also did an updated version of the game that not a lot of people liked, and then made a version of it called Old School RuneScape, which is equivalent to our Classic. Now, the updated version of the game they have is like retail, and it literally has pay to win in it, where you can buy experience from an in-game shop. Now, fortunately, retail's never gone to that extent, but over on the old school side, which would be equivalent to our Classic, they have something called a bond there, which is the same as the WoW token. But in terms of buying in-game advantages or progress or convenience with real-life money, doesn't exist, and people would absolutely lose their mind if Jagex ever tried to put that in the game. But in WoW, it's taken one expansion and here we are back on course for microtransactions again. Look at all the drama surrounding the New World MMO from Amazon at the moment. They're planning to have a cash shop on the actual launch of a game where you can buy XP boosts or profession boosts and all these other things. I feel like TBC Classic is the earliest opportunity Blizzard could have got this kind of thing into the game, and they're full well taking advantage of it. Unfortunately though, it feels like people who care about this to the extent that I do, and I know a lot of you do, we're in the minority these days. People play games differently, and people seem to value being able to skip stuff with real life money rather than having a game which creates an environment that makes you want to play it and actually get through the levels, earn your rewards at the end, and have that delayed gratitude, which I always felt had been such a huge part of online gaming for me. Whilst I am still looking forward to TBC, the actual monetization metrics they're getting in do worry me going forwards, especially thinking about Wrath of the Lich King, which at this point is kind of a no-brainer that it'll happen should TBC have a successful launch, which I've no doubt that it will. But if they're willing to do what they're showing us with TBC at the moment, you can already imagine your Northrend pass and your character boost for that as well. Just makes sense, right? So this was meant to be a bit of a shorter video, but it ended up being a bit more of a talk on this whole subject. Not to get bogged down in the negatives, I think there are a lot of positives going forward as well, but it's kind of hard to ignore them at the same time. So I guess for the ban wave that went out the other day, I hope the players targeted get it removed from their accounts pretty swiftly. But if that's the attitude we can have going forward for the botting side of things, then it could be very positive. So fingers crossed, I guess. We'll see how things look in a couple weeks. That's about it though. As always guys, thank you so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.